He said they're going to suffer judgment.
Okay, they are going to suffer judgment, but before you get to that, in verse 21, what does he now expand this to say? Okay, in other words, to be angry at your brother without a cause. Okay, so then you could be guilty of murder and not do a physical act, right? But simply just be angry at your brother or your sister or someone individual, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe even a group, I don't know. And what I want you to understand is because when people read the Ten Commandments in Exodus, their first thought is that it is the act of murder that is in view there, or the only thing that is in view there. And what Jesus is trying to tell you is this, that the motivation for murder is anger. Often it's vengeance, right? And that begins where? In the heart. It's exactly right. Every action begins in the heart. You know what I'm saying? So what he's saying is that, guess what? You need to be careful because anger is a very dangerous thing. Yes, Ms. Paul.
Is the brother in this sentence literally your brother, or is this your Christian brother?
I think this could be either one. I'll be quite honest with you. I think that you could be mad with somebody who's not even a Christian without a cause. You know what I'm saying? And in God's eyes, you've committed murder.
What is Raka?
Okay, Raka means to be worthless. Now you're getting ahead of us now. You want asking all them questions. I can't let Gail ask me no more questions. Gail plays stump the chump with me. I don't know what it is all the time. And he's always, you know what I'm saying? So there are 3 types of anger here. Now you keep your finger where you're at, okay? Because I couldn't put the verse up here and put this other slide up here. So there are 3 types of anger. Now what are they? Okay, what's the first thing he said? To be, go back to your verse, to be angry with your brother, how? Without a cause, right? And if you commit that murder, right, you're in danger of what? Judgment. Is that not right? Now, what's he talking about here? This is the anger that broods. This is the anger that will not forgive. This is the anger that says, hey, you know what? The Bible says I got to love you, but I don't want to be around you. All right? You met these kind of people that when they get angry with somebody, they just stew on it and stew on it. I'll tell you what, if you're not real careful, this kind of anger turns into bitterness very, very quickly. You met people who had regrets in their lives. Oh man, I wish I hadn't done that. That was enough of a thing. But you also meet people who become bitter over their life. That they didn't accomplish what they should have accomplished. That they didn't have the money in the bank they ought to have. That their kids, weren't doctors and lawyers and titans of industry and all that. This is the kind of anger that he's talking about. Okay? It's the first kind of anger. All right? And what's the danger? The danger is judgment. Is that not right? Okay. What's the next kind of anger? This is what Miss Barbara asked about. When you tell your brother what? Raka. Okay. What does Raka mean? And we're not saying Rocco. I know that's what y'all thinking. What does Raka mean? Answer something. Empty one, worthless, empty, a term of total vilification. What's he talking about here? Anybody? This is an anger that responds by doing what? Remember what I told you when we get mad with the message, what do? We kill the messenger. That's exactly right. All right. So this person is vilifying someone else by telling them they're useless, they're worthless, they're empty. Now think about this for a minute now, because how many times have we done that? And I ain't talking about you, I'm talking about me. Right? Now what's the judgment that follows this? The earthly counsels. Now think about this for a minute. How about what do they call that? Help me somebody. Character assassination. Slander. There you go. You can slander somebody and what'll happen? They can sue you. You know what I'm saying? You need to be careful about what you say. It's an angry attitude that says, I'm going to get even with you. Okay? And then the last one is what? Now, this is the most strenuous of all, which is what? This anger wants to cut people off at the knees. Okay? You find this in companies when they begin to start trying to move people out. And the people say, but I'm not retiring, I'm not leaving it. And they say, well, just keep on and we'll find 8 ladies that will come up and tell you, make up something about what happened to you. And you totally destroy that person's character. You know what I'm saying? Then he said, you need to be careful because now you're pushing on the walls of hell. You need to be real careful. And I want you to notice something about this. Do you see how serious anger can be? Do you see how serious a subject? Now, that's something when God says, if you're angry at your brother without a cause. Now, think about that for a minute. How many of us did? If you're riding in the car with me through Macon, you're probably saying, he's murdering all them people on the right lane. And you're probably about half right, I guess, in God's eyes. But the idea is that do you begin to see how easy it is to fall into that trap? You know what I'm saying? Of this uncontrolled anger. And God says, hey, it's just like murdering somebody. It's just like killing them. And, most of us would say, I would hope none of us would be contemplating murdering somebody. But that's exactly what that uncontrolled anger can be. Okay? Now, I want to look at something here. I want to look at Jesus and anger. Okay?
Pastor,
yes, sir.
before you get started on that, does that mean even if you just hold it all inside of you and don't say anything to anybody about it?
I think that what you're dealing with there, the reason that that's dangerous, I'll give you an example. So oftentimes when there's a death in a family, especially a tragic or what we would call untimely death, person wasn't sick, a train ran off the tracks and killed them or something, or they were particularly young, we would say, well, we're angry with God. Well, why did you let this happen? Okay? Now, people would say, well, that's wrong for you to do that. And see, I disagree. Because you need to let it out. Because if you hold it in, it will destroy you. It will. And people say, well, I can't ask God why not. Everybody else throughout history has asked him why. Why can't you? What makes you any better or worse than them, Now, here's the deal. And this was in my uncle's funeral too. There were 2 good preachers that did this. He says, the problem is, he says, but just be assured when you ask the why, be prepared to take the answer that comes back. Because see, most of the time, we don't want to hear the answer. I mean, we already know what we think. You know what I'm saying? But that ain't what God's talking about. So, I do think it affects us to hold it inside. It is not necessarily the lashing out. I think it's an attitude of the heart. And I think that's what he's trying to deal with here. And I think that's what we're going to see as we move on. Okay? Because it bodes to the next question, which is this. Is there such a thing as justified anger? And is there such a thing as unjustified anger? Okay, we're going to get to that. Y'all are getting way ahead of me. You know what? I think y'all need to teach. Y'all got me beat by 3 slides. Anyway, you're absolutely right, Bill. You're absolutely right. He said in Matthew 5:39, Jesus said, but I say unto you that you resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. Tell me what it means.
I've heard what I call great pastors say, well, you better not hit me on the cheek.
I think he's right. What is he saying? That you resist not evil. So that means when somebody breaks into your house and is going to kill you and your family and steal all your stuff, you just lay there and say, well, turn the other cheek. No, actually what he's saying is when he says that you resist not evil, what he was trying to say was, you know what? You don't tolerate evil. And sometimes, guess what? Evil is only possible when good men do nothing. So I'm telling you now, evil is only possible when good men, the men that know to do right, do nothing. But now what's he talking about? This turn the other cheek. Okay. All right. What's the attitude of the heart? Because I'll tell you what, you turn the cheek to some people, what will they do? They'll smack the other one. You turn it again, they'll smack it again. Is that not right?
Yeah.
So it can't be that. If he just told you don't succumb to evil, is that not right? It can't be that. Now listen to this. This is in John chapter 18, verses 22 and 23. It says, when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by Jesus, or stood by, struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, answerest thou the high priest? Now, what would, if it meant what we thought it meant in chapter 5, what should he have done? Listen to what he says. Jesus answered him, saying, if I have spoken evil, bear witness to the evil. Smack me. But if well, why smitest thou me? What did he say? He said there is a time, right, to turn the cheek. There's a time for justice. Is that not right? And sometimes that means standing your own ground, doesn't it? But it wasn't just Jesus. Listen to this. This is Paul. Romans 12, 17 through 19 says, recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. What's he saying? Now, think about this, what he's saying here. Think about this for a minute. Go back to the 3 types of anger. Remember? When he says, don't seek vengeance. We're told all throughout the Bible, vengeance is the Lord's. Why? Why not get revenge? Because most of us will never seek vengeance. We don't want to get even, we want to get ahead. Say amen. And because we don't do vengeance well, God says, leave that to me. And I'll take care of it. But this part right here is what blows me out for. He says, if it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Now the question is this. Did you notice how that verse started out with? What's the first? Woo, I did something. All right? If Paul says the first word is if, which means what?
It's possibility.
This might not happen. Now, think about this for a minute. What about the next door neighbor that just, you're going to let their tree just fall on your fence? And you go over and say, gee, sir, Mr. So-and-so, would you please kind of trim your tree? Touch my tree! My great Aunt Ethel's great-grandson, twice removed sister's brother, planted that tree.
I have a neighbor, big tree in my yard right now. They won't come over there.
See that? So what I'm trying to say is this, right? What happens when the other person won't live peaceable with you? Okay? You do get angry. What about this? Listen to this. This is Acts 23, and this is Paul. He says, and the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to smite him, Paul, on the mouth. Then Paul said unto him, God shall smite thee, thou whitest wall, for sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandeth me to be smitten contrary to the law. What is Paul saying? Does he sound upset? He doesn't sound happy, does he? Now, think about this for a minute, because this is the man that's been left how many times for dead? Stoned, shipwrecked, snake bit. And when he goes to hit him, what does he say? You might want to think about this. Because you say you're judging me according to the book, and the book says you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. All right? Does it make any sense now? Is this coming to you any at all? So, the question is this: is there a justified or unjustified anger? And if there is, what's the difference?
Is that justified, what he's talking about right now?
I don't think he'd put it in the Bible. I don't think Paul would have said that it wasn't justified.
So then,
Because, okay, but here's the deal. Who is he upset with?
Priests.
Is he? Who's he upset with? Because this answers the second question. Right? I keep going. I'm sorry, guys. It ain't y'all, it's me. Okay. Put this down. Leave it alone.
he's upset with.
Lou Dale's mama's upset with me.
Then hit Jesus, the one that slapped Jesus?
No. This is right here. That's right. Right?
The high priest.
And Paul said unto him, God shall smite thee, thou whitest wall, for sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law. He said, now, guess what? God will have his way, because vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord. Is that not right? So his anger isn't out of control, is it? Okay? Is his anger justified? Because what is he calling into account? He's not calling the high priest into account. He's not even calling the guy that's going to smack him into account. What he's calling into account is what? The fact that you said you were a priest in the law, and yet you do contrary exactly what? To what the law says. Now, wait a minute. Now, on the one hand, you tell me, I'm going to do it this way, and on the other hand, you do what? The complete exact opposite of it. Now, do you begin to see why he's angry? Okay. Now, my question is this. Is there a justified or unjustified anger? Is there? What's the difference?
Justified in Scripture.
Miss Barbara, you got gloves on. You'd be all right.
And they're peaked too.
They're fake. All right, Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 26 says, be ye angry and sin not, right? He says, let not the sun go down upon your what? Okay?
Does that mean go ahead and tell them before it's not
That's one way of interpreting. That sounds like the Highway 78 Harlem International version. Okay? So he says what? Be angry. No, it's not what he says. He says, be angry and what? So there is a way to be angry. Why? Without sin. Now, how is that possible? Go ahead, Miss Barbara. Don't talk about smacking on some of these kids. I know what you're thinking.
Well, they're talking about the law here, and, I mean, but that's what's confusing me, because the law is in the Old Testament. This is in the New Testament.
Okay?
So
All right? So the law is in the Old Testament. What did Jesus say? Not one jot, not one little mark is going to pass away until it's all what? Fulfilled. Now, we just went from Exodus 20:13 that said, thou shalt not kill. Old Testament. We went to the New Testament, and what did Jesus say? If you're angry with your brother without a cause, guess what? So, did the Ten Commandments, how to put this? Did they become more stringent, harder to keep, or less harder to keep?
More
From the Old and the New Testament.
More.
See, they're more stringent. Why? Because now Jesus says what? The whether you obey them or not isn't about the physical act of obeying or disobeying. It is the what?
Thought.
What it always has been, the attitude of the heart. So you can't say the law is Old Testament. No, the law is necessary. The law of God is perfect. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, Paul said it's the schoolmaster that brought us to the point of grace. Because once you look at it and say, I can't keep this, none of it, then what do you have to have? If you can't fulfill the law, you got to have grace. Is that all right? So it does apply in the New Testament. All right? So now he says, hey, be angry, but don't do what? Don't sin. So that there must be a way. If he told them to do that, there must be a way to do it. Is that not right? In other words, there is an anger that is without sin. All right? Now, how do we get there? Okay? Listen to this next verse. It's John 2:13 through 16. It says, the Jews' Passover was at hand. Jesus went up to the temple and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables, and said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence. Make not my Father's house a house of merchandise. Was his anger justified?
Yes. Yep.
Why? And what makes it different than our anger?
Because they were selling things there that they should not have been doing and desiring God.
Right? What makes the act of anger justified or unjustified? And what is it? It is the object of the anger. That's what I'm telling you now. Go back. When Jesus drove them out, what did he say? Don't make my Father's house what? All right. Now, he got some little, he made a scourge, you know, the 9, 10, 9, 10, but he made it out of little cords, didn't he? So he was going to hurt some feelings, but he wasn't going to break their skin. Is that not right? So, his object of his anger, think about this for a minute now, was what?
Their activity at the
It wasn't at them
temple.
directly, it was at what they were doing. No direction.
It's never, Jesus' anger is never directed at the person. It is always directed at the situation or the sin. You have heard this before, I know. We have to hate the sin, but love the sinner. Is that not right? Now you begin to see what we call righteous indignation, is what it boils down to. I'm going to give you an example. All right? How many of you sitting here would sit here and watch somebody molest a child? Would that anger be justified?
Yes.
It absolutely would be. How many of y'all would go to a nursing home and knowingly watch somebody in that nursing home abuse an elderly person? Would your anger be justified? Yes, it would. Not at the person, but what? At the act that is going on.
But the person's committing the act.
That's exactly right. And the person who's committing the act will, according to our laws, do what? Well, forget it. That Miss Sandy just won't do it. She said he's going to get off. And unfortunately, you're probably right. But still, the idea is that what if we are in fact truly a nation of laws, what must we do? Now, you watch Gunsmoke lately? Matt don't just go out and string up some people. Although there were some guys on there that need to be strung up. Right? But the idea is that guess what? If we're a nation of laws and we say we are, right? If we can stop that person from doing it, who should take over? The authorities. Vengeance isn't ours. It isn't ours to get because we don't do vengeance well. Yes, Ms. Paul.
So we were talking about the nation of laws and the laws that we are making in this day and time. Some of them are laws that should not be made. And, I mean, you know, moral laws is what I'm talking about, more or less moral things that are being done, that they're making them into a law. That can we not be angry about that? It's like,
At what point do you stop hating the person doing a crime, committing a crime? I'm thinking now about homosexuals. If they don't stop what they're doing, you can still hate that person for that, right?
No.
Hey,
Because here's the deal. Because if that were the case, then if somebody walked in who I knew was openly gay, and I had people in my family who were openly gay, I would tell them, you're not welcome here. And you'll never hear that out of my mouth. Now, I may not agree with their lifestyle. Now, that usually is enough to keep them away from me. And I'm pretty vocal about the fact that I don't agree with their lifestyle. But love them, because here's the deal. God can save them out of that. Just like he can save anybody. But now I go one step further. Now, think about this for a minute. Jesus and the thief on the cross. Remember that? Remember me when thou comest into your kingdom? And he said, what? When I enter into paradise, I will what? You'll be right there with me. Is that not right? What happened to the thief on the cross? Did he not die? He was saved, absolutely. Did he die? Yes. He died to death, didn't he? Why? Because he was a thief. Right? Now, can a person who killed their family in anger be saved? Yes. Right? Does that preclude them from going to the electric chair? Not at all. Because sin still bears a consequence. Is that not right? And that's not anger. That's not hatred. See, that's what the gay and lesbian people would like to preach to the rest of the world, is that Christians just hate us. No, I don't hate you. I just don't condone your lifestyle. And I'm never going to call it normal. And it's never going to be right in the eyes of God. Nothing you can say to me is going to make it right. But see, the problem is what happens, we get so vocal and loud and angry that what they do is turn around and point their finger at us and say, see, yeah, that's a Christian act. He wants to kill me. No, I don't want to kill you. Not let you in my house? No, I probably wouldn't let you in my house. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want you to have an influence on my children. But, broke down on the side of the road, would I change your, I'd help you change your tire. Yeah, because that's what Jesus commanded us to do. See, this is where we wind up in this thin line about what are we angry about. This is where righteous indignation turns into a selfish pride. That somehow or another, I'm better than you are. Because the verse is, the wages of sin is what? Death. Is that not right? Excuse me, let me requote that. The wages of sin, it's singular, is death. Now let me ask you a question. He's involved in that homosexual lifestyle. Is he any more guilty than the person that's committing adultery?
no.
Is he any more guilty than the drunk that goes out there and wipes out a whole school bus full of youngins? No. But we, in our pride, see, because that action is so distasteful to us, say, but he's horribly evil. No, he's a sinner. Just like I was a sinner before God gave me grace.
Jesus told us all, hate the sin of other sin.
Okay? So let's look at this now, right? So it's never the situation, okay? I want you to also notice something here that, guess what? It was not what?
Out of control.
Out of control. When we get angry, what happens? Last night, about 10:30, 11 o'clock after we got home, we let the dogs out. I sat down and flipped on Fox. And I saw the great state of Alabama crash and burn. And I could have bit a 10-penny nail into it. I guarantee you, I talked to 100 people down there in central Alabama, and there wasn't a one of them that was for the guy that won. But because they made enough accusations, and the danger is, guess what? Now if somebody just makes an accusation, you're guilty. Nobody has to prove anything. You're just guilty. Right? Not necessary. But here's the deal. You can lay up and get a stomach ache and an ulcer about it all night long. Or you can say what? God's in control. Is that not right? And ultimately, he's going to work out what he would have work out. And sometimes, remember what we've learned? Nebuchadnezzar, Babylonians, the Assyrians, God did what? He used all those people to correct Israel. And that may be what God is doing. He is setting the stage to correct this nation. Yes, Ms. Martin.
Okay, I was going to ask you, when you protest something that the government has done, is that letting your anger get out of control?
No.
Okay.
Not as long as you're not, breaking in plate glass windows and putting out 55-inch TVs. Now, if I see you on the news and you're running with that 30-incher on your shoulder, I'm going to say, you know what? That Miss Barbara done got out of control. And if I see the little Flanagans coming in behind you, I'm going to say, doggone it, she done taught them how to do that. Listen to this. Romans 12:9 says, let your love be without dissimulation or hypocrisy. Abhor that which is evil and cleave to that which is what? What does the word abhor mean? Hate. Hate that which is evil. We need to be hating that which is evil. Is that not right? Not the sinner, but we need to hate the sin. Now, how do we do that? Preacher, how do we do that? Well, here's the deal. You know what? I had a guy tell me one time we were talking about abortion. He was in a protest line, talking about protesting. Now, right? Abortion clinic, and he said, you know how we could, one fell swoop, Christianity could do away with this abortion mess. I said, man, how's that, preacher? Tell me how that is. He said, if people call themselves Christians, we quit having abortions. That's all it would take. Now, brother, let me tell you something. They talking about kicking in the stomach. That's alcohol killing everybody. Well, Christians who quit drinking, you know what? Guess what? Smoking cigarettes and look like he was on fire, preacher. If Christians had quit smoking, guess what? Supposedly, we make up almost half the population of the United States. Now, I don't know about you, if you lose 50% of your business, guess what? That's hard to make a living, ain't it? Nod your head. See? But the problem is that guess what? We say we abhor it, and yet we participate in it. You want to be angry with evil? Don't participate in evil. You know what I'm saying? And I can't believe it. You all hear me all the time. There's a clothes shortage in Martinez. Well, don't walk around in tank top and flip-flops and a bikini bottom, you know what I'm saying, when you go to Walmart. You say, people don't do that. Let me show you on the internet. I just hope and pray they ain't got Bethesda Baptist license plate across their backside. That would really upset me, you know. So don't participate in it, right? Abhor that which is evil. Can you do that without being angry? You're going to be angry and upset, right? But again, what do you have to be angry and upset? Just like the thing in Alabama. You know what I was upset with? I'm not upset with the guy that won. I'm not upset with the guy that lost. I'm upset with the process that says all I got to do is get 3 people to say, hey, I saw him somewhere, and that's enough. That bothers me. It really does. And it should bother all of us, because here's the deal. You know what? Trump is next. Whether you believe it or not, he's next. You know what I'm saying? And this is the world in which we live in. And so people like Ms. Barbara said, well, what about if we protest? We ought to be protesting. Somebody ought to be standing up and saying, this ain't what I believe. I don't know what you people are doing, but that ain't what I believe. But we don't. We sit back and let the media and different things like that guide us and direct us, and then we say, how did we get here? I'll tell you how we got here. We're asleep at the switch. Amen?
Trump works, so we can't protest.
I'm sorry.
So most of us who are for Trump work, so we don't have the time to protest.
I felt like that was his biggest downfall outside of draining the swamp. When he said, I'm going to create jobs, I'm thinking, you're in a nation that don't want no jobs. They want to check. They want to work.
What do you do when the government makes a law, though, that's contrary to God's law?
Yeah, that's,
What do you do?
you gotta protest it. How do you protest that?
Write your conduct.
What did Paul say? Or Peter said, remember when they beat him outside the temple and said, don't you mention the name of Jesus anymore? You know what Peter said? Let God be true and every man a liar. That's exactly what you do. And you know, if you're going to fire me, then fire me, dude. You know, get on with the program. God's got something better for me. You know what I'm saying? But just make sure what you're standing up for is righteous. Is exactly right. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because I can tell you something. There's been some things that I've gotten angry about that wasn't so righteous. Matter of fact, actually, some of them were prideful. And you know what the Bible talks about the pride, what happened there? Not a good day. And we're not talking about Carolina pride either. That is good stuff. Okay? We got to stop right here. Them people, if we don't, you don't go over and get your grandkids, youngins, or whoever, they're on a sugar high now. So, if you can't get them bedded down till Sunday, you talk to my wife. Okay? But y'all please be careful going home tonight. I love y'all. If you need me or I can do something in the coming week, please don't hesitate to call on us.